anyone signed up?
Nobody signed up.
And I don't see a student representative here. We'll go ahead and move on to matters that require board action. Purchase of the new scoreboards sponsorship.
Oh, thank you.
Who would like to speak to this item?
Okay.
Yes.
What was it? I missed
The idea of sponsorship to support upgrades to the athletic scoreboards. We were, as extracurricular committee, Eric's not here to speak to it, but we were looking to get the board's input on how they feel about soliciting local businesses for sponsorships to support upgrades to athletic scoreboards and to start the process of exploring what they cost. And then if any local businesses were to provide sponsorship, how do we feel about their logos or ad placement or what have you? This was a discussion item. I don't have the motion in front of me, I apologize.
I think that is there a reason that we would need to move on this evening? Is there a time constraint?
Not at this time. I believe Tom is still in the process of gathering price quotes and information about specific scoreboards. I think the concern, the question that he had raised was, as you were just discussing, the potential to have local sponsors. We don't have a board policy that prohibits it, but it's not something we would want to move forward with without at least acknowledging and asking the board.
I think that we may have a board policy that prohibits advertising by companies that are sponsoring things, or manufacturers of alcohol, tobacco products, and things like that. Outside of that, I don't think that we have anything. Neil?
Was Eric at your meeting?
Thank you.
Stanley, did you just have a communications meeting?
No, he's not here tonight.
Huh?
He's not here tonight, he was not there. So this is the
Okay,
meeting you
so
sat in with.
Huh?
You were at the meeting with Rob and I and Eric when we talked about
But
this.
you just had a meeting just today, didn't you?
That was CRC.
Oh, excuse me. I sent an email to Eric thinking he would. I think one thing we ought to look at is GoFundMe. GoFundMe costs you 8%. But we can, I talked to Tom Walsh a year ago and then dropped it when we didn't know anything about the CNC. He says that we can take direct deposit from credit cards. And of course, that's the way everybody wants to do business now. So I don't know, if we haven't got it set up, and I didn't call Tom, so I don't know the answer, but we now take them for the kids to pay for their meals. But we could take them for general, but we need to do something to make that happen. But it'll save you 8%.
Like an idea that is a little bit separate from what we're talking about right now, but it does sound like a good idea for the athletics.
Well, I think it's direct because we were going to also look for donations for these scoreboards, but okay. If you think it's separate.
So we need to, I think, investigate whether we have a policy that supports or does not support sponsorship of scoreboards. Right now, we have athletic fields that do have some advertisements around the perimeter. I think there's some indication that this is something that we could do. So perhaps a board member could send this for a review of the policy chair rather than going to the entire policy committee just to double check to see if we have any policy that prohibits such a thing.
Can I speak to that?
Sure.
I think Tom was just looking for the board's blessing. You know, there are advertising on the fields, in the gymnasium, and on the programs of games and things like that. This is going to be a little bit more permanent. So he was just, and it's not timely to this week, so we can table it for now.
Does anyone want to make a motion to give the board's blessing contingent upon a review of policy? So that's Sherry. Is there a second?
I would second that.
All right. Any other discussion right now? All in favor? Aye.
Was the motion?
The motion was to give our blessing for advertising on the scoreboards contingent upon a review of policy.
I am against that.
Opposed?
Any advertising from, because it can be down to one person gets to advertise forever. Government pays the money. And there may be other people who would like to advertise the same way. I think this needs a little more investigation before we pass it.
And are there any abstentions? One, okay.
Who's the abstention?
Bob?
Are we, did we do the vote? Or
Yes, we
because
did.
he asked a question in the middle of it, that's why I didn't vote.
Are you opposed or abstained?
I would abstain.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on to warrant article review. We were not able to place the completed MESA warrant article into this as we had hoped. However, the placeholder is there. You'll see the articles have been renumbered according to votes that we took at the last board meeting. This meeting, we will endeavor to say whether the board supports or does not support each of the articles. On Article 1, we are missing the default budget. Quickly, could I just get an update from you, Brian, on the default budget so we know when that's going to come together?
The last thing I heard from Wayne, they were still discussing our letter back to them in response to the original unofficial number and did not get a reply.
I don't think that we are able to express supports or does not support on Article 1 at this time. Does anyone disagree? All right, Article 2. Article 2 is on the renovations to Mount Caesar Elementary School. Would anyone like to make a motion on whether the board supports?
Make a motion.
Second.
Support or not support?
The support.
Is there any discussion on Article 2? All in favor of supporting this article?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. That one is a support. Article 3, this one is on the $210,000 for health and safety items. Would anyone like to make a motion on this one?
Make a move to support it.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Did Dave request that we not call them health and safety anymore?
He may have, and I wasn't a part of that conversation, so I'll stop that right now.
When he spoke over there, I think he felt that it's more of their maintenance at this point,
Okay.
rather than health and safety.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
So we are supports on that one. Article 4. This is the $1 to be added to the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund. Would anyone like to make a motion on this?
So moved.
To support?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Is there a second?
Let's have it.
Phyllis? Okay. Discussion.
I'm just reading, I know why we did $1, right? But are we hamstringing ourselves if in public discussion where we say no new amount to be raised from taxation? Where's that money going to come from if they, at deliberative session, if they up that amount?
It would come from surplus. That's what you were going to say?
Yep.
Yep.
From
As it did in the past.
unallocated fund balance at the end of the year. So
Got it.
if it's not there, if there's not enough, then that wouldn't come from that.
Any other questions or comments? No. All in favor of supporting?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Supports. Article 5, this is the collective bargaining agreement with the specialists. Would anyone like to move this one? Okay, any discussion? And we did have a second from Betty. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Very good. Article 6 on the MDEA contract. Take a motion.
To support.
All right, any discussion here? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? One.
Opposed?
Abstentions?
One abstention.
Okay. Article 7 is just a placeholder for MESA at this time, so we'll skip that one. Article 8, to listen to the opinions of a purely advisory nature with regards to the conduct of school affairs for the ensuing year.
Motion to support?
Second?
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And this one doesn't have the supports, does not support piece. Is that generally stated on the warrant article?
I don't believe it is for this one, but I'll double check. If it is, I'll add it in.
Okay. All right, that takes care of that piece. Our next matter is continued discussion of Troy and Emerson reconfiguration. What we'll want to do is get a motion to study a specific configuration on the table so that we know what we are trying to accomplish before we go out and perform a study on that something. Does anyone want to make a motion on a specific configuration that should be studied?
Could I ask for clarification on the word reconfiguration?
It would be moving a specific grade from one building to the other. I can imagine that there may be other ways to reconfigure the schools, maybe putting all boys in one and all girls in another. I mean, it's whoever has an idea about what we should study. We want to make sure we get it out there so we have plenty of time to gather the feedback that we need. Betty?
I would recommend that we study having a primary school and an intermediate school.
Can you define
So,
primary?
through either 2 or 3, and then 3 or 4 through 6. It'll depend on what the building will tolerate and how many kids are at those grade levels, in my opinion.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Can we choose something very specific, though? Because if I'm a parent of a second or a third grader, my opinion is going to differ depending on whether my child is moving. Does that make sense? So where do we want the cutoff to be?
Well, as I said, I think we're going to need to find out what your numbers are at each grade level, how many classrooms you're going to need, how many classrooms you've got in each building. Because I don't know if either building has any open space right now. So I understand from a parent's point of view that you would want to know if your child's going to have to move or not. But I don't have the information right now to make an exact recommendation.
Would anyone on the board be opposed to having Dr. Stone speak to this for just a moment? No? Okay. Dr. Stone? The specific question is, if we were to reconfigure with pre-K to second at Emerson School, would all of the students fit? Or if we were to try to fit in pre-K all the way to third, would all of the students fit?
If we were to do pre-K to 3, they would all fit at one building, yes. I would have room if it was pre-K to 2.
So they wouldn't fit if it was PK to 3?
They would fit. There would be extra space at Emerson if it was just
Okay.
pre-K to 2.
And what's the situation at Troy School? Is 4 to 6 a better fit, or is 3 to 6 a better fit?
The current population that I think it depends on population, but the current population that we have, I think, would be pre-K 3 and 4 to 6
Okay.
would be my recommendation.
Brian, you had a question?
I think my recommendation, if we're kind of discussing how to pose, whatever proposal we're putting forward, we start with the general model of how we have Matt, Caesar, and Cutler, and then wait for administration's recommendation as to what best fits our need at this point. And, when we started the conversation, the goal was to best level the class sizes that we're having issues with. So I would support whatever the administration says that we need. And if we have to word it as broadly as saying, put forth a model based on the Mount Caesar Cutler model and go from there based on recommendation from administration, I would support something like that.
Mount Caesar and Cutler are currently pre-K to 2, right?
Yep.
And then 3 through 6?
Yes.
Okay. How would you like to word your motion? Because again, I'm concerned for the parents who have a second or a third grader. They'll want to know what we're really proposing for them. And the staff too, if you're a second or third grade teacher. That'll change the way that you see this reconfiguration.
Well then, Kevin, if you think they'll probably fit either way, I'd go K2 and then 3-6.
Okay. Neil?
What's the objective we're trying to solve here?
I don't get it either.
What are we trying to accomplish by a
Yeah,
reconfiguration?
there should be an objective written down, then we should have looked to go from there, but we don't have one. So what is the objective?
Brian,
I think
you
from the
originally
beginning,
brought
the
this to us.
discussion has been leveling class sizes. We have some challenging numbers in specific.
The class sizes have been going down in both schools, and we've managed to do it since 1962.
What I have heard since we began this discussion was initially last year, it was that we thought there were some cost savings there. Turns out there really aren't very many cost savings, but this year's primary driver is that we have 25 first graders in one classroom at Troy School, and I think we have very large kindergarten class sizes at Emerson School, if I'm not mistaken. And the thought was that if we were to combine the two schools at grade level, we would be able to eliminate some of those very large class sizes.
We had large class size challenges last year as well. That was a concern.
We did. We wound up having 2 kindergartens at Troy School the day before school started. We split it. Phyllis?
Yeah. I guess just sitting here and coming up with numbers, we don't have every grade level at this point in either school. And without sitting down and getting some feedback from staff and parents, it looks premature to set up the grade configuration. It just seems like haphazardly.
I agree with
without
that.
a study.
Yeah.
Without looking at the figures, looking at the rooms, it just doesn't make sense for us to quickly come up with that stuff unless we really study it.
I agree with that.
And maybe the whole thing is premature to get it out there, and then we find out we can't quite do it pre-K to 3 or...
Right now, we've got pre-K to 2 and 3 through 6 on the table. And the motion is to study this specific configuration. If we learn that something else is going to be more beneficial for the schools, then certainly a final motion or movement forward would be based on what we find through our public hearings and our information gathering. Winston?
We've done a study. We paid for a study when we were working with the Keene combination study here just, 3-4 years ago? And they had some recommendations in there for Troy and Fitzwilliam. And
You're
what to
referencing the
do.
NIASC report?
They wanted to consolidate or eliminate or do what we're trying to do now.
Right.
And I think we ought to look at that to refresh our memories a little bit.
I think that's a valuable part of our study as well. We've got to start somewhere.
Right now, I think we're starting in a blank hole.
I do too.
It's just doesn't make sense to make a motion that we don't have any
Betty and then
purpose
Bob.
Just in relationship to Neil's concern about why are we doing it, one other benefit I can see is in both schools you have grade levels that only have one teacher. And if you combine all the K through 2 in one building and all the 3 through 6 in another building, there's more room for collaboration at a grade level among the staff members.
All right. Bob?
Yeah, I agree with your thought about being as specific as we can be with the motion, with the understanding that it can go wherever it goes. But I agree with you that by being specific relative to Dr. Stone's best estimate of capacities, then the most affected parties will be drawn into the conversation. If you leave it nebulous, then you're probably not going to draw in the most affected parties. So I say we start with our best guesstimate and see where it goes.
Brian?
I would support any discussion if people need further information, but we had a conversation before the holidays where I would propose we go to administration and facilities and say, what is the last date that we have to have a decision so we can move forward next year and then schedule our study backwards so we can get to where we want to get to satisfy the group, but still be able to make a decision that affects next school year.
We did bring that information to the most recent meeting. Our facilities director said that there's not much that needs to take place facilities-wise. What we need to worry about is getting people to buy in, feel good about the decision, making sure that we know all of the pros and cons before we move forward. So, as far as facilities goes, there's no date to back into.
Okay, my perspective is that we historically get dragged down from action with talking and discussing and studying, where we already have a model that proves to work in Swansea. I don't know.
What I'm going to suggest when we assign the stakeholder liaisons next is that these stakeholder liaisons go out and get initial high-level pros and cons from each of the stakeholder groups and bring them back to us for our meeting 2 weeks from now. Okay? And then 2 weeks from now, the board gets to make a decision on, is this looking promising enough that we want to schedule some sort of public hearings or additional meetings with selectmen or whoever else? Does that make sense?
Who's this high-level person?
I don't understand your question.
You said you're going to have some high-level person study this. Is that what you said?
No, I didn't.
Stakeholders.
The stakeholder liaison will be a board member that goes to that particular stakeholder group to make sure that they understand all of the concerns from that stakeholder group. Right now, we're having additional discussion on the motion to reconfigure pre-K to 2 and then 3 through 6. Is there anything else on that specific topic?
State the beginning of that motion again.
To study a specific configuration of pre-K to 2.
Somebody else make
Emerson.
the motion, please.
And 3 to 6.
We've
Betty's already
been
made the
hit for
motion.
Already
that.
made the motion.
And we
She's
have a
restating it.
second.
Betty did.
I'm restating it so that we can finish up our discussion and take a vote.
Thank you.
Okay? We all done with discussion on that piece?
I think I'd like a roll call on this one.
Roll call. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Phyllis?
Thank you, Dr. Stone.
Yes.
Wynn?
Yes.
Karen?
Abstain.
Neil?
No.
Nick?
Abstain.
Brian?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes?
9.833 yes.
Okay. Seeing that that motion has passed, I've listed a couple of stakeholder liaisons on the agenda. The folks that I've listed here are in no way tied to the roles that I've assigned. These are just suggestions. You can see facilities, Lisa Stedman. First student, Lisa Witt. Unions, Lisa Stedman. Troy and Emerson administration, also Lisa Stedman. Troy Emerson staff, Scott Peters. Scott, are you okay with that one?
Sure.
Parents and students, Phyllis Peterson. Are you okay with that one?
Yeah.
Yep. And taxpayers and selectmen in Troy and Fitzwilliam, Winston Wright. Are you okay with heading that up?
I am.
Okay. So it'll be our goal as stakeholder liaisons. Would the board like to vote on this to support the stakeholder liaison? I'll take a motion if anyone feels that's an important step.
I have a question.
Yes?
Oh, I can't. We haven't got a motion yet.
Sherry, were you about to make a motion?
No, I feel like it's okay to do it by assignment, but I'd be okay with voting, but I don't feel strongly enough to make a motion.
If anybody
I
wants.
think an important question would be whether or not anybody would like to have one of those roles.
That'll happen under discussion. I mean, if there's going to be a motion here.
Well, then I'll make a motion that we vote to support
Is there, Betty's the second. All right. Go ahead, Nick.
I just said, I don't have a problem with it. I'm just saying, I think if there is somebody that would like to speak up about it, that they should have the opportunity.
Would anyone else like to contribute to this list? Winston?
I had Phyllis and I had an email from a member of the Budget Committee to be on one of the committees. Wendy Martell from the Budget Committee specifically wrote, and I promised to bring it to the board tonight to see if this could, are they going to take in any outsiders right now? But no, she's very concerned about this reconfiguration. She's talked about it a lot with both Phyllis and I, and she would like to be on a committee. And if it helps, I would welcome her to help me on the taxpayers and select.
That would be wonderful. Yeah. I mean, as far as I'm
She's
concerned.
really interested in this, and she has a lot of good thoughts.
She has a lot of good connections, too. So if you could use her help in your piece, then
I can sure
by
use
all
some
means.
help.
Yep. Any other questions or feedback on the stakeholder liaisons? No. I want to reiterate that our goal for the liaisons, each of us, is to go to our assigned stakeholders and get a high-level list of pros and cons to bring back to our next meeting, which takes place 2 weeks from tonight. High level. Okay? Any other discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
That included Wendy.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't want to leave her out after we talked about it.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, whoever you think can best aid you in getting to your stakeholder group and having a good line of communication with them, use your resources.
Yep.
There were no abstentions, so moving on. And we've already assigned the task, so I think we're good with that. We know what we're doing next. In 2 weeks from tonight, we'll have this item on our agenda again, hopefully with a nice list of pros and cons, so the board can review that and decide whether it's worthwhile to move forward. Okay? Matters for information and discussion, board chair report. Setting board agendas. I wanted to bring this up because we do have policy BEDB. Neil?
Is this going through the policy committee, or is this your idea?
I'm going to ask the policy committee to put it on their agenda.
It's an existing policy, however.
It's an existing policy.
So it hasn't been the policy yet?
No, it hasn't.
Long time ago.
Yeah. Neil?
I'd like to comment on it. I think changing it to majority from less than 2/3, we shouldn't do. And you're also eliminating turning in the data on Thursday. You're saying now you want it a week in advance. That'll eliminate the Thursday. What has gone wrong with the way we do it now? Why do you want to violate Robert's rules and say a majority can change the budget?
Can I slow you down?
A majority
for just a
can
second?
vote.
Let me slow you down. I put the School Boards Association version of BEDB in our current version. I'm not making any recommendation. I wanted the board to have the two versions to
Why don't
see
you
that
just
they're
turn it into
different.
policy then, instead of discussing it here?
That's what I'm trying to do. It's in my board chair report so that I can ask that the policy committee take it
Well, those
up.
are my comments.
And I, as board chair, feel like we do need to look at this policy. I want to put it on the agenda if possible. Because there are some new things in the School Boards Association version that we need to take into consideration, especially law that came into play in 2017. Also, I would ask the policy committee to look at, specifically at the piece that says the superintendent prepares all of the agendas for meetings for the board. In our practice, the superintendent and the board chair collaborate in that. That doesn't necessarily have to be changed, but it's something that the policy committee should think about. Also, items can be placed on the agenda by any board member. it's unclear right now if the board member has to submit that in advance, or if this item just speaks to a board member bringing something up on a specific evening. If we could get some clarity around that, that would be helpful. Okay? So is the policy committee willing to take that up?
Yes, no problem.
Thank you. The New Hampshire School Boards Association Delegate Assembly is coming up, and I put a little bit of information into your board packet on that. The way the Delegate Assembly works is that there are a bunch of resolutions that have been forwarded to the School Boards Association by school districts around the state. And if there are any of these resolutions that you feel strongly about and you want our delegate, presently me, to vote one way or the other, it's important that your delegate knows that before showing up at the delegate assembly. Okay? So if you would please look at the proposed resolutions and the continuing resolutions and let me know if there's anything you feel strongly about. Then if it seems to be a controversial subject in any way for the board, then we'll certainly bring it back and we'll see if the rest of the board agrees with you, and I'll take your instruction on how to vote on that specific item.
Question?
Yes.
Attached to the agenda was the list of continuing resolutions. Is that everything we should be reading?
The continuing resolutions and the proposed resolutions for 2018.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so those two
Got it.
items.
Thank you.
Yep. It would be appropriate for us to assign an alternative delegate, just in case I can't attend. Is there anyone who would be interested in taking that on? Winston?
I've been to one many years ago. It's a very interesting day, and you get to sleep and you get to be awake. Depends on what the motion is, but it's very interesting, and I have some ideas on these resolutions too.
Are you available on January 20th?
Right now, I hope you are.
So far, so good. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion to support Winston as our backup delegate?
Sure, so moved.
Second.
All right. Any other discussion? Did you have something, Scott?
It's not under discussion of the motion for when, so let's finish that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Very good. Additional discussion on any of the proposed resolutions?
It's just a curiosity that I don't recall in my years that we've talked about this prior to the delegate assembly. This is a good thing. What I'm curious about is our process in providing feedback to you or when. It feels like those would be sort of one-off conversations of our personal opinions, not something we necessarily have the opportunity to discuss as a board, or, what's our collective agreed stand on something.
We do have time to talk about this as a board at our next school board meeting. So the reason I said if it's something that seems that the full board might like to have input on, for instance, if Scott says vote no on Article 2, and Article 2 seems like something that many of the board members may not agree on, I'm not going to go and automatically go and vote no on number 2 just because Scott said so. I'd want to know that that's the will of the board.
So could I suggest, make a motion if necessary, that we all provide you with our feedback in time for the next agenda setting, and that any feedback you get be on our next meeting's agenda?
Yes, sir. Is there a second to that? All right. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye. So does that mean by next Thursday?
It means,
By next Wednesday night?
depends. Do you want it in your board packet? Because it could be by the day before if you're okay with not having it in your board packet. Winston?
In the past, we have written resolutions to be considered by the School Board Association and presented. You don't have to be there to present them, and then they'll give you an answer whether they'll support it or not.
And the time frame for us proposing resolutions passed us by in late November.
And also, you have the same things, either the superintendent or the boards, they send a letter that Monadnock supports, like number 1, number 4, number 5, or they don't send a letter, so it's all done.
So I believe that, did we vote on this, guys?
You didn't finish it, so I don't have a clear. You didn't.
Okay.
You know, those are abstained, so.
Is there anyone opposed? Are there any abstentions? Thank you. Sorry, I knew I got interrupted somewhere, I just wasn't sure where. Anything else on the delegate assembly? All right. As in my board chair report, I do need to ask for one more favor of the board. We have policy BGF, which tells us that on a day that school is snowed out, we're not allowed to have any school board meetings. However, we're in a real serious time crunch with our MESA contract. And I'd like for the board to suspend policy BGF so that the negotiations committee could meet on Thursday if school is canceled. What it takes for this is a unanimous vote. Because you weren't pre-warned. It would have been 2/3 if you'd known about it before today. But because I'm just telling you now, it takes a unanimous vote of the board if you're going to allow the negotiations committee to continue its work on Thursday if school is canceled.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Nick. Winston's the second. All right, I'll take Karen first and then Lisa.
I guess my concern is who is on that team and would everyone be able to travel in the snow on Thursday? And is that the same for the other side? Because it would be unfair, in my opinion, if one person on either side would not be able to attend because they live further away. So that's my big concern.
Do you want to answer that or do you want me to?
No, I was just going to suggest that you expand that motion to include Friday,
Oh, just in case on Friday.
based on most recent weather.
Would that be a friendly amendment, Nick?
Sure.
Okay.
Got a message for the kids?
And who was the second? It was Betty, correct? Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
You calling on me
No,
now?
I'm calling on you. Yeah.
I can't understand why you're saying everybody has to vote for this. 2/3 vote, we can add it to the agenda.
Because our
Under your own policy that you want to change.
policy BGF says with prior written notice, it takes a 2/3 vote if it's internal board operations.
So we can add it to the agenda with a 2/3 vote.
Policy BGF says that if it's to suspend policy, it has to be prior written notice, otherwise unanimous.
Can I move the question?
I'd like to speak to it.
Are you okay with Bob speaking to it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Bob.
The intent of the notification is so that the public can participate and everyone can know what's going on. Government in sunshine, so to speak. This is a negotiation that we're dealing with a very compressed time frame, and we would have to have a quorum present for any work to be done on either side. And those of us who are participating are willing to make every effort to get a quorum there on Thursday or Friday, depending on the weather. So I think this is consistent with the intent of our notification procedures.
And there's a high level of motivation on both sides because it's kind of do or die time. Yeah. Betty.
And sort of in line with what Bob said, it's not really a public meeting, so we're not denying anybody access to the meeting.
It just affects the committee only.
Nick has called the question.
Yep, I'm sorry. I forgot
Do
that.
you want to withdraw that?
I'll withdraw my call to question.
Okay, Winston and then Karen. Winston?
Nope, I'm all done.
I guess
I missed it. I'm sorry. Could you restate what you said?
Pardon?
he said he's all set.
Karen?
I would make an amendment that if any person on either side cannot attend and has a problem with it, that the meeting not proceed, or it's scheduled so that everyone that wants to attend is okay with it. I don't know, I'm just concerned that somebody's going to say, I live really far away, everyone else can get there, it's down to the last minute, and I'm the one that disagrees. Or I don't know the situation, I'm not in negotiations, but that's my concern.
All right, that's reasonable. Is that a friendly amendment?
I just don't want to have anyone on either side come back and say, I don't think this was fair, I'm furthest one away, I disagreed on X, Y, or whatever.
If that's an official amendment, then we need to vote on the amendment first, and then we need to vote on the original.
Right.
I'd like to speak to that.
So would I.
Okay. Do we have a second for the amendment?
Sure, just for the sake of it, second.
Okay, and now Bob's going to speak to the amendment, and then Nick.
Yeah. Based upon our meeting today, the committee members are going to make every effort to attend regardless of the weather. I think that if anyone cries foul subsequent to the meeting, they can bring that issue up in this forum, and they can comment on how decisions were made and whether they approve or disapprove. I don't think we need to put constraints on this meeting that are very hard to interpret and enforce.
Nick and then Rob.
So who's on the MESA negotiations subcommittee? And that's the total body. It's just the three of you, right?
So there are four of us. It's Winston, Lisa, Sherry, and Betty, and then our stand-in is Bob in case we can't make quorum.
Do any of the five of you have an issue with the original motion?
Well, we discussed this earlier, and I think I'm the furthest one that lives outside. And I'll be here.
So I think that should alleviate.
Well, I'm also concerned about the union side as well, like. They were present too.
It's just for this committee,
Okay.
not,
Rob, sorry.
Two things. A, who would make the final call? And then B, can someone who can't make it, in reference to Karen, can they be brought in via phone or telecommunication device of some kind?
So if the amendment passes, who makes the final call is your question.
Yep.
Winston?
we've discussed that in the meeting also, Bob. The one person that can't make it early, so they have we have to have 3 people out of the 4 there to continue the meeting, and that's been covered. If we, it looks like we'll make it. Weatherman's calmed down a little bit tonight.
All right. Any other discussion specifically on the amendment? All right,
So
so
who's making the decision? That was Rob's question.
Explain yes and no, please.
the amendment is,
What are we agreeing to for the amendment?
okay. So if you agree to the amendment, then you would be agreeing that we're going to add to the original motion a requirement that everyone be in agreement, everyone participating in the negotiation be in agreement prior to that meeting being held.
Is that what you said, Karen?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. All in favor of changing the motion, adding the amendment? Say yes. Aye.
Aye.
All in favor of not adding the amendment? No.
No.
I need to do again.
Yeah, I didn't get to vote against the first one.
All right, somebody who's an expert in Robert's rules of order, tell me, how do we do a do-over?
You have to not be in favor.
Call for a do-over.
Just do a roll call
I call a
vote.
do-over.
I request a roll call vote.
Let's do roll call.
On the amendment.
On the amendment.
Yes means you like the amendment, no means you do not like the amendment.
I feel like it's just to
Go ahead.
make sure everyone's
Phyllis.
happy.
Yes.
Wynn?
Abstain.
Karen?
Yes.
Neil?
Yep.
Nick?
Abstain.
Ryan?
Yes.
Cherry?
No.
Rob? Rob, sorry. Bob Mitchell?
Oh, no.
Rob?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Scott?
Abstain.
And Lisa?
No.
Okay. 6.311 yes, 3.241 no.
Okay, so now the motion stands as we will allow the meeting to take place on a snow day, Thursday or Friday, if all of the parties agree. Okay? So no one's left in the dust, stuck at home, if there's a snow day. Nick?
And just to clarify, it's not as though the board can say, we're having it on this date.
Right.
And the other side, you're coming. You know, that's not how it works, so. Okay.
Okay, do we want roll call on this one? All in favor?
Aye.
No? Abstain.
I abstain.
Still unanimous, though, right? Am I right?
Just because my question
Thank
didn't
you.
get answered.
And they were two legitimate questions.
All right, thanks very much, guys. Moving on to the superintendent's report.
You had coming around a correspondence that was received. I apologize, I wasn't able to get it into your packet. I didn't actually see it until it was too late, even though it was probably would have made it. It's a letter from Elaine Moriarty. So I just wanted to make sure, she asked that we forward that to each board member. So that was provided for you tonight. Tomorrow, the New Hampshire House reconvenes, and one of the first bills it will take up is SB 193. I do plan on being in attendance. I don't anticipate that they're going to be taking any public input, but just in case. And the other item, it's on the agenda, Jeremy was going to update us on the ACES opening in our newly funded schools.
So we've talked about it a little bit before. We have new grants to run: the Mount Caesar program, the Cutler program, and the Troy program. The Cutler program is up and running, so the kids from Cutler are no longer at Mount Caesar. They're over at Cutler in the afternoons, and they're doing mornings at Mount Caesar. That was the design of the program, and that's working well. Back to Basics is running well at Mount Caesar right now. So we have all the grants written. Troy's grant is written and approved and ready to spend, but we're having, and we'd open tomorrow if we had staff. We're having trouble finding the required staff that we have to have to be the site coordinator, and you need at least one site coordinator and one group leader for both before and after school, and it can be the same person. In each role can have, it's 2 total people. Each role has their own person. So we're working now. We're reaching out to all the other after-school programs around to ask them where they advertise. We're reaching out to the college. We're reaching out to the high school, and basically just putting out everything we can to find that staff. And as soon as we have them in place, we can open the Troy program. It's ready to go. It's literally just waiting for people now.
Where have we posted that in the past?
Usually they post it on School Spring. I think there's other places to post it through, like an after school, the 21C kind of community. So we're researching that. I have one of our office staff people basically stopping everything else and only working on that right now, and making sure that we reach out to the state to find out the best way to advertise that. They're going to reach out to Franklin Pierce, Keene State, for college kids. They have to have, in order to be the site coordinator, you have to have certain credits, basically college credits in early childhood education or in education period, in order to qualify for that role. And that's not ours. That comes from the state.
And it's specifically early childhood education?
Early childhood or regular,
Elementary ed.
Elementary ed.
And you say that's not our criteria, so there's no way to relax that to expand the candidate pool?
No. Yeah, child development. Those are the words I was looking for. Child development courses.
Question?
Yeah.
Is there an opportunity to extend this, even if temporarily, to any of our other existing staff? If we were to do that, would we be paying them overtime, or is it funded from a different entity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with teachers or with salaried staff, we can do stipends, and we've done that in the past, and we're doing that over at Cutler. But with the hourly people, if they go into overtime, the way the overtime works is you end up paying the overtime for out of both pools of money, out of the district pool and the grant pool, and that causes problems, as it was explained to me. That causes problems because the grant can't be paying overtime for their district hours, but the way it gets calculated, the grant would end up paying overtime for district hours, not just for grant hours, and vice versa with the district. It's the way it's calculated by DOL, Department of Labor. That's how it was explained to me. If people have another take on that, I'm happy to listen and investigate further, but that's what I came up with. That's what we've been told.
So what I think I just heard is that it would have to be a teacher, not a paraprofessional.
Yeah, right. Or a para can do it for 4.5, 5 hours a week, depending on how many hours they have. And we do have that. We do have some paras that work a couple hours here and there throughout the week to support the program, and that works well. But for the site coordinator, there's just too many hours. They can't do it. It would push them way too far into overtime.
Okay. Betty?
And is there something in labor law that it has to be the same rate of pay? You can't, it's one paycheck if they're the hourly people. It can't be two different rates of pay, one for during the day and one for after school.
Yeah, there's some question about that, and I've had both answers, and
Okay.
I didn't explore it too much further because of the overtime issue.
Okay.
So I didn't go down that, but I've heard that as well, but I've also heard that that's not true. I've heard both.
Have we considered taking someone as an interim? I'm sorry, Neil, you're next.
Are you all set? No business managers report?
Not tonight, no.
Are we okay with taking someone as an interim till the end of the school year?
Yeah, we have, we don't even need an interim. It's that we don't have anybody. For that site coordinator position, there wouldn't be a need for it to be an interim position because we have the money to pay the full salary, and we have, it's just a matter of getting someone to actually take the position.
Neil?
I guess I'd like to make a comment. There's been two major financial mistakes made this month. I don't see how a guy can come in one day a week and replace the 60 hours a week that Miss Fortune put in. We need an answer here, or we're going to be in trouble. One of these times, that mistake is not going to be able to be fixed.
Can we put that on the back burner for right now until we're done talking about ACEs and come back to it? Are you okay with that, Lisa?
Yeah.
Okay. So for the ACEs position, I think you said you were looking for one site coordinator and one group leader.
Yeah, that's what we would need to get up and running and open.
Is there a link that board members or others in the public could share somewhere to try to get more candidates for the positions?
Sure, it's posted on SchoolSpring. And what I can do is, I don't know, I can get it to Lisa to get out to you the appropriate way. I can show you all the places where it will be available after the ACES staff get it out there to the other locations. They were working on that today, and they're going to finish it up tomorrow.
Betty?
Have you accessed the substitute list?
Oh, like cold called the subs and asked them if any of them are...
No, if there is someone that is a substitute that we use that would like that position. Because they
No,
might
that's a
not
great
have
idea.
looked at School Spring.
That's an outstanding idea. I can start kind of looking at that and talking with the principals and seeing if there's someone that would fit that and do some cold calling on them. Thank you. Good idea.
Does anyone else on the board want to share an idea? No?
To your right.
Sorry, Sherry.
Do we have the electronic subsystem here? Couldn't it be posted as an opening and then all the subs would see it?
The openings post on a day-to-day basis,
Posted every
but we might be able to push something out. Yeah.
Long-term mission.
Yeah, I will look into how to get that out. I think that's a really, getting to that sub pool, I think, is a really positive idea.
All right. Any other questions or comments for Jeremy? Thank you so much for the update on that.
Yep.
And Lisa, that brings us back to Neil's question for you.
Yep. We will need to go into non-public under C later, and that might be the appropriate place to address those questions.
All set with your board chair report? Or I'm sorry, your superintendent's report?
Yes.
All right. And is there a business report?
There is not.
We were kind of light on committees. We know that CRC did meet this evening. Would you like to give a report on CRC?
Sure. We talked mostly about working on the warrants in plain English. We've created a Google Doc so that we can continue to tinker. We need some additional information, and of course, there may be changes at deliberative. And so we're going to warn a meeting for immediately after deliberative for us to deal with any changes that were made. And then we'll have that plain English warrant in your packets, and we'll be able to vote on it on the 16th. We talked about doing our next few committee meetings at the schools that we are proposing that we might be looking at for reconfiguring, so that we would be able to get some feedback from the public in terms from the Community Relations Committee. So it would be one more avenue for people to have some input into what's going on. We talked about developing some stories that might go into Monadnock Education Matters, or might be as press releases on some of the things that have been happening in the district, some student achievement information, what we've done to control special education costs and correct our needs that were in that department, with the idea of getting some more information out to voters prior to either deliberative or to the polling date, because there are misconceptions, and if we can get some information out, that would be beneficial. So that was, I think, broad strokes of tonight's meeting.
Thank you very much. Any other committees that want to give a report at this time? All right, that brings us to our next item, which is work to rule. And we had sent out a couple of specific questions to the union and the head of the MDEA union, right? Sorry, Rachel and MDEA union.
Oh, it's Rachel
And
back
did the
there?
two of you come to speak to this matter this evening? Or would you like to? Could you come to the microphone?
We did have a short conversation, but internal union business is really not appropriate to address at a public meeting such as this. So we're looking at you saying it's not really appropriate for us to have a conversation at this meeting.
Okay. Is this something that you would be willing to speak to in a non-public session?
Sure.
Okay. And is the union opposed to us talking in public about the questions that we want to pose to you?
You can have a conversation amongst yourselves, that's totally
But if we
up to
want
you.
answers, it has to be in non-public?
Correct.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
All right. Lisa, can you share with us the questions that have already been posed?
I did not print out that email. Let me see if I can pull it up on my phone.
All right. So do the members of the board understand what work to rule is and where it came from? I do. Nick?
I think it'd be important just for the public watching this for you to give that definition.
Work to rule is a provision that the union voted upon that says that they will work the hours that they are scheduled to work, and my understanding is nothing more. Right? And we've seen some effects of this in the district, one of them being that concerts are being held during the day instead of in the evenings. Okay? I'm not sure the extent of the other effects. I'm sure there have been some, but that would be one of the primary questions. What effects has this had? Do you have the others?
I do. The four questions that you had discussed at the last meeting, what does this mean? Meaning, what does it mean, work to rule? What is the message? When did the vote take place, and what can we do?
Okay. And are there any other questions that the board would like to ask of the union? Yeah, Neil?
Are you interpreting work to rule to say that they can refuse to do what you ask them to do?
I'm not interpreting it. I'm just reading the questions that were posed.
But if you give them a direct order, they follow it and grieve it, right?
They can.
Okay. Betty?
I had 2 or 3 questions. Is it affecting professional development participation?
Or you don't.
Do some just not participate? Are they attending staff meetings that happen after school, special ed meetings that could happen before or after school? Knowing we're getting into the bad weather, if the buses are running late and they have duty, do they stay to finish their duty? And how is it affecting the internal morale among teachers? If some of them are supporting it and some of them really aren't, is that happening? And then, again, the definition, what are the hours and the responsibilities that they continue to do?
Okay. Do any other board members have specific questions you'd like for us to pose to the union? No. I had a few more. What were the other options that were considered? If the contract passes in March, will this end in March? What do we anticipate for 6th grade graduation, which traditionally takes place in the evening? What if the teachers wanted to work extra hours? And how are you communicating your message to the public? Is anyone up? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, can I just clarify that at the moment, the association is not implementing your work to rule words? So I just want that on record.
Nor would you have to tell us at all.
Okay. So then we'll want to add to the list, if we are not implementing work to rule, why are we having concerts during the day? Is there another way for me to state that, you think? No? Okay. All right, very good. So we'll put together this list of questions. We'll pose it to the union and we'll set up a non-public session for them to respond to us as a board, okay? Good. Action on the manifest?
Yes. I'd like to move the manifest in the amount of $1,435,241.64.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Do we have the money?
Just gonna say that. Do we have the money?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Now we've got the minutes of December 19th. We're looking at the
I'd
public
make a
minutes.
motion to approve the December 19th public minute.
Thank you, fellas. Is there a second?
Second.
All in
Order.
favor? I'm sorry, discussion. Go ahead, Neil. I'm sorry.
Did you recognize me?
I did.
I moved to strike all the ones that Lisa Stedman made because she was chair and didn't give up the chair. She did it. You all got notified of that, so don't act surprised.
Is there a second? All right.
I feel like if that's a motion you wanted to make, it would make more sense to ask someone to rescind a vote versus modifying the minutes, and then it would be reflected in last week's minutes and this week's minutes. I
Okay.
wasn't there, so I'm unable to do that, but
Thank you. I think that sounds like it makes sense. Any other discussion on the minutes? Yeah, Rob.
The last session's minutes, as I read them, I don't know if maybe I'm not understanding or whatever, but it seems like there's some confusion, at least as to how they're wording in regards to 2017 building assessments. All of a sudden, and this is the reason that I asked for the definition of reconfiguration, all of a sudden now we're talking about building assessments and reconfiguration and it's getting meshed in with the Troy Fitzwilliam conversation. You look at the minutes back there, I don't think they're as clear as I would have liked, because this is a physical plant conversation, and reconfiguration, as you defined it tonight, is a movement of student conversation.
Right.
Utilize building space. Those are two extremely different. We spent $20,000 on this report. And I just want to make sure that it's not misunderstood or misdefined in those minute meetings. And I knew we were going to discuss it tonight, but I don't see it on the agenda as it was listed here.
Okay. So I think you're correct that under continued discussion of Troy and Emerson reconfiguration, we brought two pieces of information. One of them was the response from Dave LaPointe. The other was the building assessment information, because that was required as a piece of information we needed to move forward on our reconfiguration. However, I don't see anything that's not clear in that paragraph that would lead us to believe that reconfiguration is shutting down an entire building, or...
We didn't say shut down. We said look at the reports and have a discussion with Dave LaPointe here. And that's why I asked for a clarification on the word and I'm not trying to break, bones here, but reconfiguration, how do we define that? That's, I don't know, maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way.
Scope and objectives, Robert.
What's that?
If we had a scope and objectives at the start of this, we would know the answer to that question.
So I think the crux of the question was, is there anything in these building assessments that would prevent us from studying a reconfiguration at grade level?
That was not the intent of these building evaluations whatsoever.
No, but the intent of bringing them under this topic and having them as a piece of required data was to see if they would impact our decision on Troy and Emerson.
We're doing some serious scripting here.
I'm defending the minutes as they are.
Okay.
Is there a specific change that you want to ask for in that paragraph?
Well, just again, I know we have a lot on our plate, but I guess the thing that I'm upset about, and I looked back at the minutes to look over it, is that we're not discussing this as we said we were going to tonight. And Dave LaPointe is not here, as we said we were going to ask for him to be here tonight. And we were going to discuss these reports.
Okay, I think that
We're not doing any of that.
That would be a separate agenda item that wouldn't fall under Troy and Emerson at all. So
And that was my point, was that it's all getting meshed together in the reconfiguration word.
Okay.
How would you like it reworded?
I would like a discussion of the report of physical plant as we have paid for and has been reported back.
I've taken note of that for next meeting's agenda, and for right now, I think the minutes do reflect what happened at the most recent meeting.
Disagree.
Okay. Well, I don't get to make this decision by myself, so if you want to...
I'll leave it. We got other things.
Okay, go ahead.
Page 2, let's see, I guess that's 2C, when we were going over the agenda items. Regarding the budget proposal that the board approved or didn't approve, we tabled that? Did we table that?
Table the vote?
Yeah. I thought the board had voted to approve it, but
You did. I think what happened was, oh, sorry.
And then
If you go down a little further, 2 paragraphs down, Nick. The board received the information needed to move Article 1 to the ballot, and it
okay,
passed.
so we did table it and then we took it off the table and voted for it?
That's correct. We tabled it until later in the meeting.
Just wanted that clarity.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Because the way it reads with that, okay,
Yep,
thank you.
Gotcha.
Any other comments?
Are we writing the agenda now?
No, we're not. We're still voting on the minutes. Are there any other comments on the minutes themselves? Winston?
No more comments on the minutes, except my pound of flesh one shouldn't be there.
Winston?
Am I understanding correctly that this question on how the minutes should read, and it's going to be discussed at next meeting? If so, then I think this, the vote on approving these minutes should wait until next meeting. If we approve these as they're right now, then they're passed, I think.
Except for Rob's question about how the last paragraph is worded on page 4, I haven't heard any other.
No, but that's still questioning the minutes, and if you approve them as written, you won't need next week's meeting. No, for that discussion.
Are you asking for a different future action, or are you asking for us to change the minutes?
I will change my comment to reflect future action to discuss physical plant building assessments differing from a conversation of quote-unquote reconfiguration of Troy Emerson.
Okay, thank you. Sherry?
I was going to make the observation that whether or not we followed through on the action that we talked about at the last meeting, it still was what we talked about at the last meeting. So I guess I support that we leave them intact and correct the fact that we didn't take the action by taking it next time.
Yep, and that's right. So if Brian asked for Dave Lapointe to be at this meeting and he's not here, then that's an oversight by the folks, me and Lisa, when we created the agenda, and I apologize for that, my oversight, okay? We'll make sure it happens for next meeting. Any other questions about the agenda itself? Or I'm sorry, about the minutes themselves?
As far as the changes go, for that Rob was concerned about, are those changes made, or?
Rob is not requesting that we change anything on these minutes. He's requesting that we
Okay, I thought you just
take a future action to fix what we didn't do.
thought you just requested some language to be changed in that paragraph.
I did, but I will repeal that request to change it to adding a in-depth discussion about physical plant and as they relate to building assessments in
The next
future
agenda.
meeting.
Okay.
Simply because I can't remember the exact word-for-word conversation.
All right. All in favor of approving these minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention?
I
Abstain.
One opposed, okay.
I abstain.
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 Me too.
I think you better take a roll call.
Unless you want me to tell you who abstained. It was Rob, Sherry, Scott, Winston,
Karen?
and Karen.
Can I have a roll call on that, please?
We've already taken the vote. We could go back and do roll call, but
You can
I
ask for a
can.
roll call.
I think when you changed the thing, you said anytime you wanted to have a roll call, you could have one. When you changed it back last year.
all right, go ahead and do roll call.
Phyllis?
Abstain.
Quinn?
Abstain.
Karen?
Abstain?
Neil?
No.
Nick?
Sure.
Brian?
Yes.
Sherry?
Abstain.
Rob?
Abstain.
Bob?
Yes.
Betty?
Yes.
Scott?
Abstain.
Lisa?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay. Now we're looking at the non-public minutes of 9:30 PM on December 19th.
So moved.
Did you pass them around?
No, not the sealed ones. We do have some non-public.
Okay, so the non-public, sorry.
Yes.
So, I actually, just because I wasn't present, it said 3 non-public. Is that why? Is we have some other
We
ones?
have 2 sealed.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Now I'm going to pass around some sealed minutes from December 5th. When we're done with these, they'll have to come back to us, please.
And how to run the camera, we wouldn't have to go on.
They're sealed and sticky.
Give everyone a minute to review these.
You're responsible.
All right. Would anyone like to make a motion on these?
I would make a motion
Phyllis, is there a second?
to accept the minutes as written and continue it.
Sherry was the second. Oh, I'm sorry, Betty was, sorry.
Doesn't matter.
All right, let's take a roll call vote.
Phyllis.
Yes.
Wynn.
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Neil.
Yeah.
Nick.
Abstain.
Brian.
Yes.
Sherry.
Yes.
Rob.
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
Betty.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
And Lisa.
Yes.
Pass them in, please.
All right, let's pass them back, and as soon as they come back in, we'll get the sealed minutes from 12:19 out there. We've got one more after this, guys.
Oh, there's another one? Yeah, no. I'm not gonna count them.
Is there a motion on these minutes?
Make a motion.
That was Phyllis.
Accept them as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
These had to be done in public, but I don't care.
Under discussion, yes.
Can you just, what's the time on those minutes?
The
that
ones
you're
we're looking at right now is 8:30.
Thank you.
Does anyone on the board recall who made the motion or the second? Where we have question marks in these particular minutes? Does anyone recall who made the motion and who was the second? You might be
I
right.
did.
I think I might
Sherry
have
thinks
made the
that she may have made the motion.
Nobody remembers
I do
otherwise?
kind of, I remember, because I remember where you were sitting.
It wasn't me.
Agree with that.
I also remember specifically requesting a detailed roll call vote for this, and it's not reflected in the minutes.
Can we add the detailed roll call vote, Laura?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone remember who the second was?
I wasn't there.
Brian Bohannon.
All those in favor?
I'm good.
You know it wasn't Karen and it wasn't Scott.
I'm gonna make a motion that we table the approval of this until we have the proper information included within it.
I don't think the proper information is going to surface. If we're all here and if we don't remember, it's not going to happen.
Well, he moved the roll.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. All right, so there's a motion to table.
Let's second that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention?
Abstain.
Okay. Bob is opposed to
There
table.
you go. Win.
Send it back. Sherry is opposed.
I abstain.
All right, so, yep, let's send these back.
Spoken like a
Such a teacher.
Working school?
Even with the thumping.
Next.
All right, the last set is for 9:00 PM on that evening of the 19th, December 19th.
This is the latest trick. I don't know if it's legal or not. Somebody invents these things.
I'll take a motion. If anyone's ready. Sherry, and then that was Rob as the second. All in favor?
Can I just,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, discussions.
I was just wondering, did the board mean to seal the entire thing, or?
It all happened in the same non-public session, so we can't seal a piece and not another piece.
Okay, so that's why.
And the public motion is all
I'm
inclusive.
on that too.
Okay.
So, all in favor? Are there any opposed?
Yep.
And abstention?
I abstain as well.
All right, thank you. Send them back in, guys.
And everybody?
Yes.
Where did this latest thing come from where we're collecting the copies back?
It's
I've done
been,
this for sealed minutes from time to time. When they come to me in a sealed envelope, I make sure I hand them around and then I collect them back
So
again.
you invented this yourself?
No, we've always done
always
that.
done
Neil.
we've always done that.
Okay.
Since I've been on the board, at least.
I agree with that.
Because I remember when Timmy Aho was on here, that wasn't true.
Okay.
That was probably, but he didn't win.
So we're putting together the agenda for next meeting. So Troy Emerson is on there. Building assessment, discussion of physical plant is on there. Rob?
Thank you.
We'll have a non-public on work to rule. Sherry? Anything else?
Business manager status. And I have two others. If the meeting is too crowded, you can move them out. The Google meeting notification 10 minutes before the meeting. And police being called to our meeting at our expense.
All right, Google. Can you clarify on the Google notification? I'm not familiar with that.
The Google notification for each meeting comes 10 minutes before it starts. I have to leave 15 minutes before it starts to get here. So when I go home, I'll have to delete that meeting. I had to delete the one for 5 o'clock at around 5:30.
Okay.
And I get one of those for everyone. And I'm sure you all do too.
Brian?
I had my own.
In fact, look on your thing now. You're going to have one for this meeting.
You can shut those off, you.
I mean, it's nice if you're working 10 minutes away from the place, but
So Brian, you didn't have anything?
No, I do.
Lisa?
The
Sorry.
NHSBA resolutions.
You're right about that. All right, anything else? Brian, go ahead.
Yes. Somewhere along the lines, our discussion about how we're measuring demonstration of our programs for the accelerated students, I think there was a follow-up due.
That went to education. So it'll come back in an education committee report, I think. I wrong about that?
No, it came to education.
It'll come back to us through education.
So noted.
We haven't met.
By the way, I did try to get that stopped, that Google message, but it didn't work.
Is there anything else for next meeting's agenda? Go ahead.
Can I ask the superintendent to reach out to the principal at St. Joseph's School? It's come to my understanding they're adding a high school. I'd like a timetable on that and a capacity.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Very good. That takes care of our public agenda. We do have a couple of non-publics. And Lisa, it says here that we're going under A.
Should be C.
It should be C.
Another public comments?
Public comment?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I skipped over public comments. Is there a public comment? You don't have anyone, Laura?
No.
Okay. Thanks very much. Then what we're gonna do is take a recess of about 5 minutes for the TV crew to break down.